You are listening to Mining Stock Education.
We're pretty excited to get in there and be drilling these 6 targets. And there's 6 targets across 3.2 kilometers of prospective stratigraphy. So they're big. They're not just single hole targets. These could be meaningful targets as we get in there and drill them.
This anomaly area that we're looking at has never been drilled. So it's fresh. We own it 100%. I think we got a great deal all along, and I think there's real value there.
Where is the best place to explore? And it's in the shadow of the head frame, right? And that's what we have. You can see the Éléonore mine sitting there, which is high grade, quartz veins and sediments. And then, just to the east of us, we've got the Cerros Resources Chichu deposit, which is low grade intrusion related style of mineralization. So you got different styles of mineralization. You've got this greenstone belt. We've got the low formation sediments that come and fold back around. We've got other intrusive bodies that look very similar to the Chichu intrusion. So it's got a lot of upside.
I'm Bill Powers. This is Mining Stock Education. Thank you for tuning in. In today's show, we're going to get an update from our sponsor, Fury Gold Mines. Welcome back, Brian Atkinson, the SVP of Exploration, and Tim Clark, CEO. You've been doing some field work, geochem work at your Éléonore South project. Brian, could you give us an update on that? You've identified 6 drill targets. What is the significance here, and how did you conclude these were good targets?
Yeah, no, thanks, Bill. Éléonore South has been a really interesting project for us over the last few years, and we did an orientation grid with Newmont, and we identified some areas for follow-up, and that's what we did this summer, now that we've got 100% of the project. So we infilled that. We covered a large area of 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers, essentially. And we come up with 6 really nice targets, and they're not just geochem targets. We paired them with the geology, we paired them with geophysics. But what's interesting about those 2 things is the geology, the geophysical signature, and the structural setting are all very similar to what hosts the Éléonore mine just to the north of us there. So we're pretty excited. The geochem itself is really strong. It's associated with pathfinder elements, not just gold. The geology pops really nice. These are sitting in the fold noses, secondary fold noses, nice structural control. We're pretty excited to get in there and be drilling these 6 targets. And there's 6 targets across 3.2 kilometers of prospective stratigraphy. So they're big. They're not just single hole targets. These could be meaningful targets as we get in there and drill them.
And Tim, this is a 100% owned project, right? Which you worked for a couple years consolidating this project.
Yeah. No, it's this is what's interesting is there's been very little exploration on this property because there were 3 owners, Newmont, Azimut, and us, and it was very difficult to keep moving forward. And we were trying to get out there and drill, but it's this anomaly area that we're looking at has never been drilled. So it's fresh. We own it 100%. I think we got a great deal all along, and I think there's real value there.
Brian, it's to the south and in between 2 large mines. Could you talk about the geology of that region? It's a greenfields play, but it's also, there's some big mines in close proximity, isn't there?
Yeah, and that's the old moniker, right? Like, where is the best place to explore? And it's in the shadow of the head frame, right? And that's what we have. You can see the Éléonore mine sitting there, which is high grade, quartz veins and sediments. And then, just to the east of us, we've got the Cerros Resources Chichu deposit, which is low grade intrusion related style of mineralization. So you got different styles of mineralization. You've got this greenstone belt. We've got the low formation sediments that come and fold back around. We've got other intrusive bodies that look very similar to the Chichu intrusion. So it's got a lot of upside. And then, just recently we put out some really high grade lithium results on our western plain block at Éléonore South. We have 4.67% lithium oxide, right? So it's a really interesting area, and there's definitely lots going on. And as Tim mentioned, it's been underexplored because too many hands in the cookie jar sort of thing between 3 different companies trying to manage it. And prioritize what's going on there.
Tim, when are you expecting to have the drills out there, and do you have any budget laid out at the current time?
So, we raised $5 million in flow last year, and we've saved about half of it basically to start this drilling program. So we're hoping to get out early in the first quarter. I don't know the specific date, but the sooner the better as far as I'm concerned. And that's sort of the plan. And we can get out there in the winter, and it's better because it's frozen and cheaper to do it than sort of in the fall anyway. So it's kind of worked out. And the whole idea for me is we want to get out there and get results before we hear about the Eleanor sale. So I think it's prudent for us as a company to know what's there immediately.
Brian, how do you get the drills out there? Are there roads, or do you have to bring in a helicopter?
Yeah, there is roads. We can get right into where we drilled in 2024 on our side of the Chichu Tunnel Lake. It's going to depend on the ground conditions, but I think there will be for efficiency's sake helicopter use, but it's the short sort of 1 or 2 kilometer hops, not these crazy 20-kilometer trips. So we can get in there, skid drill or helicopter drill. But I think for this, because we're testing 6 targets across a big area, the helicopter drill is going to be a little bit more efficient for us.
So as you mentioned, you looked at structural geology, geochem, geophys to define these targets. But my understanding is on the Eleanor South project, you also have some golden till anomalies that you could further drill out.
Yeah, so that's something that's really interesting, and it came up through a review of some of the historical data, and I don't think Goldcorp back in the day / Newmont realized that when you file an assessment report in Quebec, it basically becomes public information. So they actually wound up sampling down onto the joint venture property in one of their campaigns, and there's some of the highest gold grain counts, pristine gold grain counts, are right down ice of our targets. And Eleanor is not in the ice direction. Chichu is also not really in the ice direction. And these are pristine gold grains. So what that means is they haven't been transported a long distance. So they're really proximal to the source. And we've got this really nice geochem anomaly just sitting, up ice of it that's, matched with the geology and geophysics and structure. So it just adds a bit more weight to these targets that we feel that they're legitimate.
With these targets, how deep is the cover before you start drilling into bedrock?
Yeah, so it's in a swampy sort of area, and that's why we had to use the biogeochem technique. So we're looking at 20 to 50 meters sort of overburden to get into it, and but that's why we're looking at the high grade stuff, right? So it's if it's there, it's going to be worthwhile for sure.
Tim, you obviously have the Eau Claire project that has been kind of your cornerstone project for the last 2 years since we've been chatting. Where does Eleanor South fit in terms of priority in light of your previous work at Eau Claire?
Well, I think with the Eleanor mine sale pending, it's right. I think the Eleanor South property is the priority right now, especially given the scale and size of what we're looking at in terms of this anomaly. It's the same size and scale as the Eleanor mine itself. So obviously, if we get in there and we get some good results early, it could be game changing for us. As far as the Eau Claire property, though, not forgotten for sure, we still have another dozen or more real targets. And we only drilled the Serendipity this year, and we just have a new discovery. And right now, as far as the Eau Claire resource itself, it's open in every direction. We just don't feel that we have anything to prove at that point. I mean, we're almost at 2 million ounces there. And the whole push when we sit down with these producing companies is they love that we have a deposit or resource that's of significance. And if we're able to prove up some of these new discoveries along the Canard Deformation Zone that runs on our southern border, that gets exciting, like a string of pearls. And we've talked about this before. Look, this summer we were strategic and we spread some of our money across 3 different properties with Committee Bay, Eleanor South, and Eau Claire. We do that because we think it's efficient and we use some money and targeted. As we think about the Eleanor South property, totally the priority. But we're running out of the same camp that's going to be down at the Eau Claire property, and it's not a lot to assume that we can't swing out and take a look at some of these new discovery potentials. I think it would be smart and a good use of time because you've got the camp open and it's right there. We just haven't decided yet. We're having a big strategy meeting this week, and we're going to talk about exactly that question. And we'll come out, in the new year probably with a good plan. But again, want investors to know we're as excited about drilling the Eleanor South as anybody. So that's what we're going to jump into first. And we've got the money.
Brian, Tim mentioned the Serendipity discovery. Could you recap, since we last talked, I don't believe we talked about that. What was the Serendipity discovery, please?
It's a similar setting to Percival. Again, homegrown sort of targets that we went out, used biogeochem actually, and we were drilling biogeochem anomalies. So I guess us more confidence coming into Eleanor South with that technique. But we wound up, we drilled 10 holes across, 5 kilometers of strike, targeting some, 6 different targets. And, we hit a meter at 5 grams, and then 1.5, almost a mile away, we hit 3 meters at 12.16 grams, in a brand new area, new structure. It's wide open. It's a single hole into it. So into both of those zones. So we've got a lot of follow up to do there. But, as Tim mentioned, there's dozens of other targets that we've developed through the biogeochem. These ones were just, the easiest ones to sort of get to, and the ones we moved through the pipeline the quickest. So it's good. It's proof of concept. We proved up biogeochem at Percival, turning that from an exploration target into a maiden resource in a couple of years. And then, we've made a discovery at Serendipity, and now we've got, more discovery potential on the Eau Claire property as well as at Eleanor South.
Tim, you have your Committee Bay project in Nunavut, and when we were chatting and sitting down at Beaver Creek together, you took out your phone and showed me a bunch of infrastructure pictures that are up there. And I believe you said there's $160 million of sunk cost that is up there at that project. What were some of your takeaways from going up there yourself?
Brian's been going up there for a lot longer than me. I had heard about the project and wanted to get up there and see it. And I was shocked at how far along they've sort of have this. It's got a 100-person camp. It's got millions of dollars of equipment already there, and not one but 2 big hangars. It's got fuel at site as well as back at Baker Lake. To me, this was prepped to be a development company, and they've got 1.3 million ounces of resource. We got a bunch of other areas of where we know there's gold, and we haven't hit it all. But it's crazy to me to think that this has zero impact on our share price. We get zero credit for it when this asset itself could be a standalone company by itself with 300-kilometer greenstone belt. It's we're running this as a very legitimate asset, and we're getting back into it after a couple of years hiatus when we had to clean up the company, get the Eau Claire resource back up to snuff, and we've done that. So we're turning our attention back to Committee Bay, and basically we went up there to do some prep work so we could get back up hopefully this coming summer. And the ideal scenario would be to bring in a producer to help us, because it's not just the money, it's you create a natural buyer on the back end. And in this kind of environment where gold has, really exploded, it becomes the north. The north really is the next great place for discovery. And Sean Boyd at Agnico used to say that for years. That's where the least amount of work has been done and the biggest potential is. And we've got a huge piece of property, and when I went up there, we did bring some other geologists to come up and look at it outside our company. And first thing they said is, how does a junior get this big a property and afford it? And we've been able to structure our costs up there that are very accessible. We got 3 drills up there. We've got huge equipment that has been flown in or in the past and left there that's in great shape. And when I got on the plane at Baker Lake, the first thing the pilot says to me is like, "Oh, I'm so glad you guys are back up here. I've been looking forward to going back to your camp." And I said, "Why is that?" And he goes, "You guys have the best camp in the whole region." And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense for a junior company. And this really isn't a junior asset. It's plug and play. It's ready to be invested in, and the lights turn on. There's nothing holding it back. Even questions about transportation, getting stuff out of there. You can have access through an estuary up there that gets the barge close to camp. I mean, this is a great place to be in a gold bullish environment, and we think we're going to get interest at some point.
Brian, you reported rock and till samples from Committee Bay. What was the significance of those?
Yeah, it's just developing some new targets using a different exploration idea. So typically you go into a region, and whether it's James Bay in Quebec or Nunavut, you go in there with an idea, and initially it was gold and iron formation, and that's worked out. There's been a lot of gold and iron formation discovered out there, but there's always been these orphan sort of gold and till anomalies that were never explained by any nearby iron formation. So we went out and started looking at the shear zones that run close to these, and they're running through any number of rocks from mafic volcanics, ultramafic volcanics, sediments, just all sort of the other rocks in a greenstone belt. And we came up with some really nice targets at Raven. The rock samples there are averaging over 1/2 ounce gold per ton. It's never been drilled. At Three Bluffs at the deposit, we've discovered this shear zone that's running sub-parallel to the iron formation that in 2021, when we last drilled up there, we hit 10 meters of 14 grams coming out of that. So it's a nice idea. And then we went out to Burrow and a historic sort of showing, and we went to the west of it, and along a shear zone where we had a nice regional till sample, and we've got a really nice bullseye sort of target that matches the geophysics nicely, sits on a structure. So it's just kind of going into that next phase of exploration up there, where the iron formation's been looked at, and there's probably more stuff in the iron formation because it's all covered by glacial till. But coming up and following up on those orphan gold and till anomalies with a new idea and new concepts is looking really good at this time. We've got some nice drill targets ready to go there.
Tim, I have a multifold question regarding your position with holding Dolly Varden shares. We've talked about Fury as an option to Dolly Varden and an option in silver, but is it really? Is there any valuation of those shares in your share price? Number one, what is your current position in holding those, and have you sold any shares recently?
Sure. Well, we have 51 million shares of Dolly Varden right now. I think it's somewhere between $65 and $70 million worth, which is a lot. And I think some people have made the comment to me like, "Oh, Fury is a free option on buying Dolly Varden." I do think the way it trades, and I've had a lot of discussion about it, is we are basically trading as a gold company. And whether we have 30 million or 70 million in Dolly Varden, I think it's almost irrelevant. It's a huge cash pile. And we're not getting, if you watch the way we trade, when Dolly Varden goes up, our share price doesn't necessarily go up with it. And therefore, when Dolly Varden goes down, ours is pretty even. I think that the reality is that there's been no arbitrage. Like, we don't get mark to market on the Dolly Varden, and at some point, there's a huge amount of value in the company that's going to get recognized one way or another. Whether a company comes in and buys us, whether the Dolly Varden gets purchased and we get a cash windfall and we got to do something with that. But we are a gold company day in and day out, and that's how we trade. And so there's opportunity. And one of the things that when you're looking at these gold companies is you're waiting for that big push in the stock price of the juniors, and that typically comes 6 to 12 months after the seniors peak. And that's how the cycle kind of works. It's historically been that way for decades. But what you want is a company that checks the boxes. And what we are is a company that's got good assets, multiple assets. We got big properties next to big companies in Canada, which is a geopolitically great place to be. We got a huge cash store potential with Dolly Varden and our existing cash. And we've got a management team that's very well connected within the institutional as well as the retail and the producing side. We've got not one major, but we got two majors that are invested in the company. And we've got an ability that we've been executing over the last 3 years. And those are the check the boxes that people should be watching. And because right now we're undervalued. And what our plan is to keep moving. And so the Dolly Varden component to me is there for us to further the gold company. And we occasionally clip some coupons. So when Dolly Varden ran up in September, we clipped a few coupons, sold 3 million shares. And what that's enabled us to do is, I think, and I'd love to see someone kind of find someone who does a better job, but our dilution has been only 3 or 4% in the last 3 years per year. And that's because we were able to leverage the Dolly Varden hard dollars. And then when we go to raise money for drilling, we do it in flow-through dollars where you get a 70 or 80% premium. We've been extremely efficient, fiscally responsible, and that Dolly Varden has also allowed us to raise money when we want to, which is typically than when you have to. And that's a huge advantage. And so when, as an example, we raised $8.5 million 2 years ago. The average discount was 15%. We did it at 7%. The average was people issued warrants. We issued no warrants. In fact, we have no warrants on our company right now, which is unusual for a junior. And so it's a pretty powerful component that's been able to us to basically be more efficient than most other companies and still be productive. A lot of companies sit there and don't do much, and so that's how they keep their dilution down. We've actually been moving forward, doing acquisitions, selling pieces of our company off, taking the profit. The Dolly Varden, for example, we got $45 million in equity 3 years or 2.5 years ago, and now it's up to $70 million, and we've clipped $15 million in actual hard dollars off that money. We've doubled and made $45 million for the company, but it doesn't show up in the Fury share price. And that's fine because it eventually will.
Tim, would the next press release be more details on the Éléonore South project drill program? Is that what investors should expect?
Yeah, we're gonna put out the geochem, and we're gonna hopefully give a time frame. And I would think that it would be in the earlier part of the quarter than the later part of the quarter. I've always hesitant to give a specific date because it's really down to Brian how fast he can mobilize. But we want to get out there as soon as we can.
Excellent. Fury, again, is a multi-year show sponsor of Mining Stock Education. The website is furygoldmines.com, and ticker symbol on the big boards in Toronto and New York under FURY. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on the show and providing this update.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.